Good morning, my friends, and welcome to Tech Conversation Secrets. Hello, my friend Dustin.
Hey, Carlos, thank you for having me on.
For our audience, we have been a couple of weeks. It's summer, so traveling a little bit, having time with the family, enjoying, but then planning everything. Like Prime just drop a bunch of stuff in here, like for the studio. So my wife came into the office and they're like, "What is that?" But couple of things coming, but definitely the technology is always flowing. And Dustin is one of my friends, and we do a lot of stuff together. And I said, I need to bring Dustin because his approach to understanding technology so we can present it correctly is something that I know about it. It's something that I've done, but I'm like, how many people understand really what to do? But Dustin, tell us a little bit about yourself. I see a couple of flags on the bag. I know a little bit of your background, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hey, thank you once again, Carlos. And yes, I do enjoy working with Carlos. And as we look at this, a couple of flags is they're they're military banners that I either served in units I commanded and or areas I served. So I am retired from the Army, from the U.S. Army. I did field artillery fires and information operations, and retired from that. And now I'm in the great technical industry, working with professionals to help us sell and win, right?
So, my friend, we title it the curse of lack of knowledge, and I sometimes try to do something to like poke or get people connected, but from a technology standpoint, we if we focus on a product, sometimes we lose how to really look at stuff. So we try to really, the idea that started some time ago was solution selling,
Mhm.
but people sometimes still focus on speeds and feeds, and they don't understand truly what the product will do for them. So give us a little bit of a background of your area and how do you look at the products so you can then help the technical folks or the sales folks.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's funny because you bring up something that I call it's actually a people problem, right? And it's from and one is that you can turn a problem into a benefit, but goes back to Dale Carnegie, right? Where he says a person's name is to him or her the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Well, by extension, the second sweetest thing is all the virtues and qualities of whatever you do in life, right? Whether it's a product that you support or something that you sell, that becomes your main focus or something, something that you're working on. And so we always want to talk about it and all the great things it does. So that's why I call it a people problem. Now, obviously, that can be flipped and be used knowing that people think that way. From a technology standpoint, if you can flip it and understand that's how people naturally want to interact, you can then leverage that so you can bring out what they want and understand where you fit, right? So from the standpoint of what we come from, so running competitive enablement teams, right, is we gotta first of all is it comes down to the discovery process. Is when we're dealing with others, do we really know what their needs are? Like looking at this is, and do we know how they buy? For instance, Carlos, you're one of the smartest technology people I know. Usually, if you have a technology problem, you kind of know what you want to do to solve it. If I have a technology problem, I call people like you and say, I can't do this, or I can't get this to work. And then you have to go through a series of questions to figure out with me what exactly I'm trying to do so we can understand it. So as we go through that, we need to, we can't just start pushing whatever we have. It has to come down to is that discovery. Are we asking the right questions? And we always have to start out that way. And so what it comes down to, what do I do? My teams provide what questions do we ask so that we can one spot maybe what is the current solution they have and why is it not sufficient enough, or what are they contemplating implementing and what concerns do they have about implementing that solution. Because from there we can then have the actual discussion of how we can fill those gaps. So that's really when it comes, when we boil it down to where we need to get to and how we competitively enable people is by providing that. And so that's really the background of what we do.
It's interesting that you mentioned that it starts with the discovery,
Mhm.
and that is a conversation. The discovery is having like you said, it's a people to people. Like when I go and buy an iPhone, I I have had every possible device in the world,
Yeah.
and when I go and, like I said, to buy something, I try to see it initially from the technology, but then what it will help me as an individual to do. And at one point, I was focusing on the technology. Oh, the Samsung whatever has this camera and it will do this. But then when I was coming to bring it into the people side, I needed to connect my exchange and my calendar and my notes and my this and like, and none of them talk to each other. And I'm like, okay, when I met someone, like literally right now, when we were in Brazil, we were taking drone photography. We're over the plains and everything. So we were over the water. And as soon as I got the video, I could pass it from the drone to my phone and I can post it online or post it on my Mac, whatever. I bring that example because, like I said, I saw the people problem. I needed to find out and ask the question: does it make more sense for me to have a camera that have gazillion pixels, but I cannot interact with the rest of my family or the different things, or to actually solve a problem that is do it quick, don't need a PhD to fix it, and try to be as secure as possible. And when we look at enterprises or businesses, it's really difficult for them sometimes to articulate if somebody doesn't guide them. Like if they come and somebody say, what is your problem? I want to do something. I want to get more clients. I want to sell more.
Yeah.
And you go like, okay. But you mentioned something that I like.
Yeah.
When you took the time to understand what was their problem, then you're able to then present the right solution
Mm-hmm.
or the right product.
It,
Did I get that correct?
you did. So one of it is it comes down to, because there is a point where you do have to start talking about why your product is good and why the capabilities it have are good. Too often, though, leading off that way, it actually turns people off. I mean, it's when I go car shopping, that's one of the biggest issues I have is they just start all of a sudden. It's like, oh, so I just happened to notice a car here, and all of a sudden you're telling me it's the best car that's ever existed. It's like, come on, I'm not that lucky, right? So people see through it. They don't want to feel like they're being sold like they are at a a car dealership, right? And sorry if you work at one, I apologize. You do serve a definite need in our society, especially here in North America. But when it comes down to it, is by going through that discovery process and understanding where they're at and where they're coming from. And like you said, it's not as simply as not everybody's going to be able to be succinct about exactly what they need. And I go back to that. A lot of times I just know that either, like I said, when we talk about technology, I can't connect. My phone isn't working. I can't get Outlook to open, or why can't I tie together these 4 or 5 different devices? Hey, why am I getting emails asking me and saying everything's down and find out it's a security risk, right? I may not know that, and your person may not know that. So you have to go through and as you pull that information out, and then you have to be able to communicate back to them what the real issue is and get them to buy into it, right? And I think that's what it comes down to as you work through these things is, do you really understand what it is? But then it is important because after asking some of the questions, after understanding where they're coming from and understanding what they're considering or what they have in place and why they're even considering a moving on or taking action, then you have to start getting in there. And from there, you should be able to identify what are the key features you should focus on. Or two is maybe you just learned that what your solution isn't the right one. Now you can save yourself the time and also the emotional impact of not closing a deal, right? Or of somebody not accepting your stuff. You're like, okay, they want a capability that we just don't do. And yes, you might want to probe it a little bit and find out is that really what you want? Because if you have that capability, you may not get X, Y, or Z, right? And but if they come back and that's the main issue they want, save yourself the heartache, right? Save that rejection feeling and just know that, oh, okay, that's where we're coming from. So, but generally speaking, we know that 80% of the time that if you have this connection with these with people like this, that you're able to then know that they want to go back to Dale Carnegie's thing and their name is the most important thing and then what they do is the most important, and you show how you support that, right? So now we flipped it. So take it from you, take it to them, from that point of view from Dale Carnegie. And then, okay, so from there, it's like, great, this is how it's going to make what you do better. And then you can tie in the exact technological points because you've got to get to that technical discussion eventually, right? Because if you don't, are you ever going to be able to show and really explain what's happening? And second is where a lot of times when people walk away from a technical deal is because they don't feel like they'll get the proper explanation of what the capabilities are. But once again, and a lot of times that's for two reasons. One is you did a bad discovery, and so you're focusing on the wrong technical things that they don't care about. So because there's only a certain subset of all the technology out there that they're going to use. Everybody uses the technology different, right? Whether, okay, they're going to use 20 to 30% of this, right, of the capability of it to solve their problem. So if you're focusing on the other, 70 or 80%, who cares? They don't care. But then, another reason people walk away is because you never get down to the brass tacks of what this thing does, and how it's, and what is it? How is it technically solving it? So then it's like, oh, is this vaporware, or are you just telling me what I need to hear? So if you can't get to the technical level, even with people who are at the higher level, they need to have some level of technical understanding to make a decision, and that's where you see deals fall apart, right? So as you're setting yourself up and you're working with people with technology, is remember what they want to hear. They want to hear their name. They want to hear about how great they're doing and how you're going to make them successful and how you're going to give them what they need to be good. And it really comes down to that. And you have to get to, away from just platitudes down to actual provable things, if that makes sense.
So that's an interesting detail because we have probably sales professionals that explain a product. Mm-hmm. And you have technology folks like SEs or social engineers or architects. And you mentioned something that I want to go a little bit deeper. That is, you mentioned that you need to know what you are presenting in relationship to what the customer needs, because you start with that discovery. I didn't hear that you said, I'm going to present my product to solve my problem.
Yeah.
You said you need to look what is the customer's problem. So you had to identify what is keeping them at night. And we're going back to that original conversation of the discovery that you need to understand what is their pain point. In your experience, how will someone in a sales role or an SC role or an architect role will try to understand the product first so they can make it relatable to that customer? Because I think that is really important.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, I think once again, as you go through the discovery, if you don't understand those pain points, but you're right, after you understand the pain points, after you understand what they currently are trying to solve the problem with, and it's not working for them, or what else are they considering to solve the problem? After that, if you can't get into where the product or service or whatever you offer, right, solves it and fills those gaps, okay, and helps them overcome maybe things they have overlooked, then you're gonna be blocked. Why would they come to you? They're like, great. So you understand where I'm at, but you have to get in and then make sure you talk about what features and show them, this is going to solve these problems, and this is also going to solve problems maybe you haven't considered, right? So you always need to, because there's going to be things that, especially when people buy technology, they always look for something that can do something more than is even generally possible, or it's a really big lift. So you got to bring them into reality, right? And it's appreciated when you do that. So as it comes down to it, is even after you've discovered, if you can't go through and address, like I mentioned, the technical benefits of your product or service, it's going to be really hard to move them along the path. But when you do that, it's got to be consumable. You're trying to go into something that is so finite, right? So as you're discussing it, it's like, yes, we have this technology. You can't just end there. The technology has to say, this is how it's implemented in our system and why it's so good. And then from that is, you've got to just show them how good it is and how it's better than maybe what the other solutions they have that they're doing. So, you mentioned this was a problem here. We have this great technology that helps us address this. This is how it's implemented in our product. Now let me show you why it's better and why it's going to make your life easier. Why is it going to answer your question and scratch your itch over some of maybe these other solutions that are out there? So that's how the technical discussion has to go. If not, and it's just, and because even if you just stop and say, oh great, I know what the needs are, and you start talking about some technology that maybe they never even heard of, without ever showing and going into detail of how your product implements that and how it's going to make their life easier and fill that need, it's going to be, you're going to run into a roadblock, right? So anyway, that's something that I think that is missed, is that when you get into the technology discussion, don't get so wrapped around the sole technology. You have to show how it's wrapped into your product and how it actually does position you against a current solution, a proposed solution, and fills their need, right?
That is a great answer. And I think that as we have worked together through different projects, one thing that I like is how you take and the information that the sales or the technical guys have, sometimes is they're figuring it out,
Mm-hmm.
but you have a different approach. And you recorded a video for the Complete Network, and I like it. And I would like to dive a little bit into that because it's important, because I think they are different teams within an organization that should contribute into what's gonna happen in that probably technical demo or on that sales conversation. And sometimes it doesn't happen, or they have a different approach. So who within the company, in your experience, should be part of, what should they be contributing to help in that area?
That's a great point. And that was a great interaction on the Compete Network. I love talking about it. So that's one of the things is, generally speaking, like competitive intelligence, market intelligence, competitive enablement, things like that are always, that's a common term you're going to hear for all of them. Strategy at times too, right? So, and it all comes down to this: is how are we competitively approaching our market space, right? So, and who's involved? So there's always one is obviously sales, because they're at the front end of the business, right? And you have to work with them. They got the closest touch point, right? But it doesn't stop there. You also have product line, right? Or product management, product line, whatever you want to refer to it as. The ones that manage what the product are really offering and the service that is being deployed. They have to have, they're trying to answer the questions of what's going on there, what do people want, and how do we connect across there. And that's a lot of the job of what like a group like mine, but then also which I call my super CI ninjas, which are sales and solutions engineers, because they touch both the technical and the sales world. So they're definitely involved, right? And it's got to be something from there. That's kind of like what I look at is that's the glue that kind of that pulls those two together, or the tether that tethers your product and engineering to the front end of the business. And then obviously you've got marketing or product marketing. because from that standpoint, what they're doing is they're the ones who are putting together campaigns. How are we going to go and present ourselves to the market? And if you don't bring all of these items together, and everybody's trying to address the market separately, the issues that you run into is you're not going to have a coordinated message. And the thing that's important is this same approach has to be used across all these different groups, but it's going to be applied a bit differently. So as we look at the tactical level, which is really the sales, like what do we have to win today? There's a very specific approach you got to take, right? That is going to be walking through how do we box in a competitor? How do we discover? What questions should we be asking? What capabilities should we be showing? How do we counter different things they bring up? What do we demo, right? So those are all things that, from that stance, you got to approach. But now when you flip that to product management and product marketing, you're getting deeper into, okay, they need to understand what's going on. What campaign should marketing be doing? What are we running into out there that may be inhibiting these technical sales from occurring, right? So, and by pulling that in and working with marketing so they can understand it, their marketing literature and marketing approaches they go out with and how they approach the market can be informed. Because as we come back and we look at, okay, we're running into people, these are the majority of the reasons why they like what we have. We know what we can campaign against. Oh, we got this competitor that's going and attacking some of our install base, and this is what they're focusing on. Well, marketing can take a larger view to it. Well, we look at it too from a technical standpoint. Product management wants to know what should we be producing next? What should the next release have? Where are they getting that information? And that's why it's so important that as we flow it up, can we help prioritize it? And by knowing from a technical standpoint what we're running into and the problems that our potential customers are having, by flowing that up to product management, it can then influence the roadmaps. So but then it's also, let's flip it around. How do they help sales? Well, many times is what's happening is they do these releases and none of us know what's in them. Right. So the thing is it's, you've got to make sure as you look at it is how is that going to change your approach to solving your customers' problems? When we do a release, it should be driving some sort of change of how we interact with our customers, because now there's a new capability. Because as we said, there's a very low percentage of new capabilities that are added in releases that are even adopted. Right. Now, I think the fallacy that every customer is going to use 100% of the capabilities isn't realistic, but even that 27% they do use is going to be a different 27% for every customer. So if you don't understand how these releases interact, it's going to be really hard to answer the questions of how we fill your need. And so as we work down that, we got that path, we have to pull in these other groups. We have to work with these other groups so that you can have the knowledge to discuss it. A lot of times we get stuck on sales tracks. If you're using the same sales tracks from a year and a half ago and there's been a release every month or quarter, what are you missing? Right? So, and then two is, it also is, what are our competitors releasing? If we don't understand what our competitors are releasing and we have the same sales track, is it going to ring true anymore? Or are we going to come across as disingenuous or maybe not knowledgeable enough? Right? So we got to understand what they're doing, because it changes how we competitively position ourselves and how we answer those discovery questions and how we fill the needs and gaps they have. Does that make the, see, I mean, it's
Yeah,
so important. I mean, it's,
that is gold. And like for our audience to take the time and go through this a couple of times, because that's gold. So all of a sudden I start thinking, I see sometimes people focus a lot in what the competitor's product can do against yours. And I remember a story about an Apple executive that when the Zoom came out, I don't know if you remember the Microsoft Zoom that could do gazillion songs, supposedly better than the iPod, and they were just like, okay, they were focusing on what they were doing good. It's not that they were not aware of what the competition could do, but sometimes I see people that they try to focus so much, and it's impossible for one person to understand every competitor that they have. So if you work in cloud and understand all the cloud vendors, or if you're on a storage, all the storage vendors, or if you're like, I remember Office has so many features, and they did a study, and people normally use under a 13% of the features.
Yeah.
One of the best features, and I don't know if you know this piece, they have a built-in spell checker and translator. They can take your whole document, and after you spell check it, it translated. It has a 50 different languages,
Yeah.
and like that feature right there. Why do I know? Because I had a need. Like I work in Spanish,
Yeah.
Portuguese, English. So, but what do you see? Do you see people sometimes focusing too much on the competitors, but then they don't even know their own product? So then they're always not presenting to the problem that you're sharing. They don't know what to present correctly.
Well, you're exactly right. It comes back down to Sun Tzu, right? Um, you know, he that knows himself but not the enemy, it's a slow, basically a slow way to victory. He who doesn't know himself or the enemy is, is going to lose. But he who knows himself and the enemy are going to win 100 battles, 100 battles out of 100, win every battle out of 100 battles, right? So you have to know yourself and what when I say enemy, it's the competition, right? And I may probably just slaughtered that statement from Sun Tzu, but it's a great statement. But
Don't worry, he will not come from the grave to argue with you.
yeah, it is, and that's one of the things that we actually run into even on my teams, is because we're so focused on looking at our competitors that sometimes we we lose focus on ourselves, right? And so what we and you'll see it, and you see this, and it's a common, once again going back to the human condition. Many times we either overvalue our capabilities or we undervalue our group in its entirety. And so what happens is we think we're better than we are, but as a group, we think that any team that we're a part of is lacking. And so then we compare ourselves against another team, we can come back and we can be overcritical of ourselves, but then we're going to be overconfident that maybe two or three things we do are really, really good. And then, but it doesn't answer the question, and it may not even be true. So by knowing knowing yourself, knowing your competitor, and also knowing your customer, if you know those 3 points, you can then better align what you know about your own product, what you know about your competitor, and align them. So it comes down to alignment, because if you don't understand yourself, how are you going to get in alignment? If you don't understand your competitor, how are you going to know how they're approaching your customers? And if you don't understand your customer, well, you're probably not talking to them anyway. So then it doesn't matter, right? It's like you're missing the boat. You got to start there. So yeah, as we look across that, one of the major questions my teams always get is like, can you just send me the comparison? And it's like, well, what are you trying to do? I've got comparisons. I got a lot of them, right? And we have some very good comparisons that have some very good knowledge. It's not, and that we could spend a whole nother meeting on how to do an actual impactful comparison, right? We could talk about that on a whole nother podcast. But it's just something, though, that the problem is by just giving somebody a comparison, and if they don't truly understand what those capabilities are, doesn't matter. How do they know if those functions being called out in a comparison, does it even matter to the customer? So the biggest thing is by knowing what it is and then looking at the comparison and being honest with it, knowing yourself and what you bring, because like I said, there is times that maybe you're not the best answer. So why waste your time and invest all this emotional capital into something that you're not the best fit? Right. So like I said, it's not often that could be the case, but there is times that it is that way. Save yourself the pain and know yourself, what you're good at and what you're not. And then, like you said, if you spend too much time looking externally, well, you should have teams like mine doing that for you. and that is going to give you those items that you can consume easily, right? So, a plug for myself. But anyway, so a lot of that is there's usually teams out there that do that, and obviously we use technical people, especially sales and solutions engineering is a very big part of what we do to understand the external. And I really truly mean that, as sales and solutions engineers are literally what I call the super CI ninjas, right? Because when you're sizing a deal and you're implementing when you're implementing a solution, you understand what competitive threats we come up against and some of these major issues. And my team has to take what you've learned from that and utilize it so we can better position the company to win, right? And okay, how should we work with product and engineering to redesign what we're doing? How should we work with marketing to better address how we go forward, and how can we make sales more efficient at selling the solutions and what we can really do? So it's very important. So once again, a little I just took a side avenue there, but it's I think it's relevant to the question you asked, and fits in there. So
it's amazing. If you look at it, we have come back 360, starting back with the original point. It's about the connection, the people. People buy from people they trust. People don't buy. Like yesterday, I was on a webinar in the afternoon, and I know the person. I have seen it for years. I actually have met him personally. I know he's one of the top copywriters for anything online, for books, for anything. And I knew about what he was doing, but because I had that personal connection around halfway to the webinar, I was already in the website looking for the offer before he even mentioned that there was an offer. I'm like, okay, I want what he's talking about. Why? The people connection. He solved a problem. I have someone that is asking me for something like that. And it's like, okay, that's the solution that they need. So, okay, I need to know what that is. So I think that the biggest takeaway that I'm taking right now is, number one, you need to understand the person that is, if you're on a Zoom, if you're on a phone call, or if you're in a meeting, you need to understand them. When you understand them, then you can see what is their need. And then you can look on your tool belt for all the products that you may sell and see which one is a fit. And because you did the work of understanding their need, you can say, I am a fit or I am not a fit. And sometimes, if you're not the fit, it's better to tell them, hey, I may not be the correct solution. You want to look at this, versus that you sell them something that then they're going to go, you sold me a bag of goods that I can use for anything. And I think that you also mentioned something that is golden, that is the internal teams knowledge of why they build the features need to come down, so the people that present the solution architects, the SEs, the sales folks, they know what they can share, and to update your deck. Like, if you're using a year-old deck, you're having problems because you're
yes,
not going to
you
be able to
are.
share.
You're not winning if you're not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, my friend, it has been awesome to have you on our show. We will schedule another session because I want to keep diving into several things.
Yeah.
For our audience, make sure that you share, you subscribe, and you send us a comment. What topics would you like to know in the technology and leadership realm? So we can connect with you. On Wednesday is the sweet spot with Paul Lewis and Howard Holton, our CIOs and CTOs, that we talk about leadership in the technology world. And my friends, we hope to see you on our next episode. See you guys.
See ya.